amazing podcast. My name is Arneet Singh. I am your host. Thank you for tuning in if you did to part 1. And this is, obviously, as you've seen by the title, part 2. My conversation with Andrew Nasargand and Sher-min Yang. 2 people that I've been friends with since high school. Sher-min even longer, since I was 6 and she was 8 or 9. We grew up next to each other, so we go back a long way. We just kept riffing for so long that I had to break this up into pieces. So I hope you enjoyed this piece because it was equally as good as the last, and the rest are just going to be the same. So on to part 2.
Well, let's talk about the orange peanut and the way that he's currently handling the coronavirus situation, shall we?
Can I tear my own foot off instead? Can I not think about this?
So let me at least introduce. I wanted to kind of just touch on Trump and the way he's handling the crisis versus how other world leaders are handling the crisis. Like I said at the top in previous episodes, I lived in New Zealand for 7 years. It's a very forward-thinking, progressive, socialist country, which is not a bad thing.
I was actually going to bring up Jacinda Ardern as my first point in how you can run this successfully.
Why are you putting the "ya" on there? It's Jacinda.
Isn't it Jacinda? I thought it was
Jacinda. Don't get all exotic on me. No.
I don't. Okay, look, let's put it this way. I literally teach English, and I don't know how this language works some of the time. It's dumb, all right? J's are somehow silent, then they're not. I hate it. No, Jacinda Ardern is probably, between her and Merkel, I'm convinced, thoroughly convinced, that women seem to be running the show way better on the world stage than any man possibly. Dear God, they're better at this than he is.
There was an interesting study done. I'm hesitant to bring this up because I don't know the study and I haven't looked up whether it's good or not, so it might just be garbage. But my friend told this study to me when Clinton was running, and he's like, well, it has statistically, it has been kind of shown that the fastest way for any government or country to get more bridges built or get more infrastructure built or get things they want instead of wars is to elect more women. Women just seem to vote for things that build up infrastructure.
Well, I'm wondering if this is a chicken and egg kind of question of turns out more progressive societies are more willing to elect women in the first place. Therefore, they're more willing to. So I'm wondering if it's don't get me wrong, I will be totally happy if just electing women solves all the world's problems because, dear God, I will do that every day of the week. But it's one of those where I'm wondering if it's because the society is already inherently more progressive that they're willing to elect more women to power, and therefore they're willing to enact more progressive reforms.
Right. And less militaristic, for sure.
Exactly.
America's a very militaristic society.
Which is hilarious that Germany is the least militaristic on. Can we talk about that? It's the 21st century and we're all fine with Germany running the world.
Germany,
anybody?
Honestly,
okay, just
Angela Merkel is the leader of the free world for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
No, she's
the leader of the free world.
Absolutely. She's by far the leader in Europe, and I think the only contestants for who would be closer to leading the world would be Macron and Trudeau and some of those other guys, all of whom are all working very hard to keep their citizens safe.
Well, let's talk about Merkel for a second. So she came into the year as a lame duck leader, and her political record was damaged by huge backlashes because of the policy she enacted for open immigration for refugees during the Syrian war. And she isn't seeking re-election, but she stepped up and started a massive revival effort that's crossing international borders everywhere, and that's from Ivana Kodasova, CNN. She took all the necessary steps to protect her people early, even going so far as to recall expats to the country so that they could take care of them because, that's something that a socialist country would offer, wouldn't it? And now their death tolls are some of the lowest in the world. They consistently have been the lowest in the world, or some of them.
Right.
So
I'm actually, I don't know. I feel like Angela Merkel's response is exactly the response I want out of a leader. If your job is to be a leader on the world stage, it doesn't matter if you're running for re-election next time. You owe it to your people to do the best thing you can. And that I feel is such the response of someone who actually deserves the position of president or prime minister, because if that's your response is to say, absolutely not, we are fixing this problem, call them back, we are solving everything we can, and we will lead. That is exactly the response you want from someone in that position. And Sher-min's entirely right. She is currently, I would argue she is the leader of the free world. I think both of you are probably right on that one, because that's how you respond to an actual pandemic crisis. I don't see how this is a question of just like, yes, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I do see that as a woman being in power, having more, a different viewpoint, a different approach to handling a crisis like this. I mean, more progressive countries will pick more progressive leaders, and more progressive leaders would mean breaking gender boundaries, breaking color boundaries. All of
I
that.
really like the point Andrew brought up where it could be a chicken or egg problem.
Yeah.
Does the poison start with a country that is unwilling to elect a female leader, or does it start from the fact that we don't have a female leader, you know?
I do think it's a problem that's compounded by both of those things. One leads to the other, or vice versa, but either way, you're setting yourself up for failure if you don't see progress and where it can be made. And that's somewhere where it failed. The other world leader that we just spoke about, Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand. I definitely moved to the US at the wrong fucking time.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell you're doing here with us.
Everybody, all of my friends are like, come back, we'll welcome you back in.
No, you can't go back.
Why would you?
They don't want
Why
you.
would you leave the place that is literally Middle Earth, you idiot?
Like I said, Los
don't get it.
Angeles, land of dreams.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't like that city that much either.
I
Some
moved.
cities vibe with you right away, and like Los Angeles did not vibe with me.
Any place that is so sunny that I get suspicious with how sunny it is, already a problem.
That's a Seattle state of mind. That's a Pacific Northwest state of mind.
Oh, entirely. But I will say, the hardiness of the rain does make you appreciate the sun more, and that is also definitely a Pacific Northwest line.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Especially during quarantine when you're potatoing in bed watching Netflix every day.
Oh, and it's just like blazing at 80 degrees outside.
It's literally just looking at you and going, you fat piece of crap. You could be doing so many better things right now. And even before quarantine, it's like the beach is right there.
I will say,
What are you doing?
Don't rope me into this fat thing here. I've been working out every day without a gym. You don't pull me into your shenanigans.
I'm happy for you both.
On my Facebook, Moulin Rouge musical soundtrack, fantastic for running.
Hey, there you go.
Fantastic for running.
Me and my snack pack are both very happy for you.
Hey, I'm
Very.
not. This is not a shaming thing. This is just I didn't want to be that way. That is not a criticism of you, sir. You live your life.
You way to save yourself. I would have kicked you out otherwise.
And that's how Andrew got booted from the podcast.
So, somebody who doesn't fat shame, Jacinda Ardern, she has been leading New Zealand with empathy in a crisis that tempts people to fend for themselves, like we've seen in the U.S. in the great toilet paper debacle of March and April 2020. People feel that Ardern doesn't preach at them. She's standing with them. One of the things that she does that I think makes her really unique is that she's making liberal use of Facebook Live to do her briefings. Right. And it makes it really personal, and it's a really good way for her to connect with her citizens. I don't see any form of that happening in the U.S., and that can only come, and she just had a kid, and she's been in office for a year, and she has more sense.
That woman makes me sincerely ashamed that I'm within 10 years of her, because I'm like, oh my God, what? How? You're prime minister, you're having a child, you're also the most caring person on the world stage. Yeah. You guided your entire country through the horrible crisis that was Christchurch. Like, Who are you? How did you do this? What is it? Something in the water you drink? How do I become you?
Led them through an eruption.
Middle Earth.
Yeah, there you go.
Middle Earth.
She's just gained the power of Elendil. She's just deep cut reference to the Cimmerillion, everybody. Oh no, Iluvatar. Dang it, I got the wrong thing. All right, anyway.
Okay, Andrew, we get it. You're a nerd. It's fine. We know
fine.
now.
I'm not. I literally don't have magic paintings on my wall. It's fine. It's fine. They're just right there.
Learning so much right now.
I will say the one thing that's been super interesting about Ardern, one of my favorite moments of just like heartwarming moments from quarantine has got to be her addressing Easter for her younger citizens and like speaking directly to children in a way that's not condescending, but also not sugarcoating the problem of like, no, the Easter Bunny might not arrive this year because, they're taking care of their own. It's like, that is such a good angle on that is someone who actively is capable of talking to children at a level that is appropriate, is not condescending, and is still able to bring about an actual change so they can understand. And if we're talking about characteristics of a leader, you should be able to lead all of your people.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes being able to address crises with children and teenagers and people who are suffering through this. And that includes people who might not be able to comprehend the whole truth of the situation. The fact that she can do that blew my mind. It was incredible to see that. And yeah, you're right. The fact that she's using Facebook Live to directly talk with citizens, it's so much more personal and so much more real and allows for a greater sense of connection with the government and its response to this, which I just, obviously, as you can tell from my wording, I want that in this country. I'm not going to get it. But I think that response just speaks volumes as to who she is as a person and who I hope to, like, she's still young enough where we are going to see this woman for the next 40 years. And I am excited to see what she is capable of doing when she eventually joins organizations like the UN and things like that, where maybe she becomes, what's the word I'm looking? Secretary General. There we go. It inspires me so much to see someone like her acting so perfectly as what she needs to be.
The fact that there's a severe lack of helicopter noises in the background of her briefings is kind of nice. It's kind of a nice change, right?
It's better. It's certainly better. Anything that doesn't bring up hydroxychloroquine or helicopter sounds or cheeseburgers, like, just take those away, and like, I could probably cope with the orange guys so much better. I just don't want to think about any of those anymore.
Drinking bleach.
Yo, my mom was having a field day about that in the grocery store the other day. She's like pointing at every single brand. It's like, that one? Should we get that?
This one, right? We gotta.
This one kills fast. This one's more effective.
Hang on, I need like glasses to push up. Sher-min, it wasn't actually ingesting. He said injecting.
Well, because that makes it better. Like,
that makes it so much better.
Better.
God, it's so much worse.
You just die faster.
God, like, I don't.
You don't even have the chance to spit it out. You just die.
Let's just talk about what Trump has been able to accomplish in this whole crisis so far.
Hang on, I'm going to say this directly into the mic. Hang on. Nothing.
I would disagree. He's accomplished one thing. He might have screwed over his own re-election chances.
There is that.
Well, let me talk about that real quick. So Trump, meanwhile, during this whole crisis, he's been actively preventing the influence of science and medicine in order to progress his political agenda.
Yep.
He has actually said that he sees the high case numbers in the U.S. as a, quote, badge of honor, showing the success of the U.S.'s testing capabilities. That
happened this morning.
He's
great.
also alleged, like you said, ingesting hydrochloroquine, which I don't believe he is, daily.
I don't think so either.
No, and here, I talked to my mom about this. And again, she's a nurse, so this is her theory. She thinks he's lying because she's like, no doctor would prescribe that to him. That would be a breach of their professional ethics.
Yep.
And he can't get that without a doctor, so he's not doing it. He's just
they hold the same level of leverage over the presidency as the Secret Service does. His safety comes first.
Yep. So get it.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure if the White House doctor was allowed to make a statement, he would show up and be like, absolutely not. I did not put him on that. That guy has absolute say over what the president ingests pharmaceutically. And if that guy didn't approve it, he's not ingesting it. That's not a thing.
Every other non-doctor, you have to get a prescription for anything you take. So
yeah, absolutely.
You're still a citizen. You don't just get to randomly shove drugs in your face once you become president.
We think, yeah.
Well, now, and then to tie into talking about voting like we did at the top, he is now using the crisis and distractions due to the pandemic to further his political goals. Voter suppression laws are slowly becoming more lax as a result of political pressure, and Republicans have dedicated $20 million and recruited 50,000 volunteers to station at polls around the country to intimidate minority voters.
And they absolutely will claim it is not intimidation. So let's put that out there first. It is intimidation. That's what it's meant for. They can sugarcoat it however they want. They can lie and say it's not. It's intimidation entirely.
Yeah, especially in open carry states. Like, what do you think they're going to do to intimidate?
God, have you seen some of the footage out of, like, the fact that people were able to stand in the Michigan or Wisconsin? Was it Wisconsin?
No, it was Michigan.
It was Michigan.
Yeah.
The fact that people were able to stand in Michigan's Capitol building with assault rifles and bulletproof vests and ammo clips with bandanas and sunglasses on to block their face blew my mind.
Scares the hell out of me.
If any image can communicate racial privilege, that image will do it.
Because if you compare that to when Black people get shot by the cops for like the slightest thing.
For jogging.
Robbery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or sleeping. Sleeping in your bed is also apparently a crime.
Oh, or that time an officer shot into another person's building just because he thought someone was robbing the place, and it was actually her that owned the home without identifying himself as police.
Oh, there was also the time the officer went into a black man's building because she thought it was her apartment and shot him.
Okay, as funny as this is, we actually can't do this, I think, without making all of us sad.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, we're talking about
that one did get charged. That one did get charged.
Yeah, that's fair.
But we are talking about something that's real, and it really does tie into how Republicans view minority groups, and it's not just about voter suppression. It really is about the entire thread of ideology from that group of people,
right?
And it does affect the way that the election is going to come out. Like, it really is going to. And places like Georgia, where Stacey Abrams is, creating huge movements to decrease voter suppression, to make it more easier for people to vote, especially in minority areas.
Which, by the way, good on her for establishing Fair Fight to keep going against voter suppression efforts. That's amazing, and I'm super happy that someone's out there fighting this kind of stuff tooth and nail, especially in time periods where literally we are not allowed to leave our homes. Like, the fact that they can coordinate an effort to stop voter suppression efforts, incredible. Good on them. I'm glad they're doing it.
Yeah. And the big thing for Republicans is they know they don't have the votes, especially because of the way the pandemic is going. It's not in their favor. They're smart enough to know that. The only way they can win the election is if they cull turnout.
Yep.
That's it. If people don't show up, they will win. Because guess who shows up? Republicans. Every election cycle.
It's the classic, and I think, I can't remember whether it was Trump or Mitch McConnell who said the quiet part a little bit too loud a couple of months ago, where it's like, well, if we do vote by mail, then we'll never get elected again. Of like, hey, you do realize that that's not a design flaw, right? Like, maybe you're just unpopular idiots who people want out of charge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're entirely right. And this is, I think that's what bothers me so much is, like, in a fair fight, in a straight up boxing match between the Democrats and the Republicans, round 1, minute 1, TKO, we're done here.
Easy.
The fact is, you're also sending the Democrats strapped down with weights. You're removing their gloves. Like, you're probably getting them exhausted the night before. Like, you're not winning fair. You're not fighting fair. You're not actually attempting to gain. And that's what bothers me so much about people who are willing to defend Republican conservative politics at this point, is the knowledge that you can stare at this system and say, no, this is entirely reasonable. Like, no, you're not actually playing fair. You're trying to cut our legs out from underneath us and pretend like you're the victim here. That's the only reason you're ever able to win anything.
Yeah. The Republican Party has done this really ingenious, horrible thing where they've energized their voter base to think that the moral thing to do is to vote Republican. The moral thing to do above democracy is to make sure conservatives are in power so they can pass like pro-life things, they can pass like all these other things, and it's worth it at any cost. And so when you tell someone who's deep into that mindset, like, no, you guys are doing all these things, it's voter suppression, that's like gerrymandering, that's undemocratic, yeah, but it's worth it because we need to keep this country on the right track.
So I don't want to immediately drive this entire conversation off a cliff by bringing up the most controversial thing I possibly could. But I remember hearing about it one time from, I cannot remember who, but I think it was a friend who I was talking to, where it's essentially at this point, the logic is for a lot of conservative voters, and obviously not all of them, because there are tons of economic aspects, there are tons of different arguments that can be made. But for a huge chunk of the evangelical conservative Christian right, the logic is anything to stop abortion. We'll take whatever you can give us as long as abortion is stopped. You want us to gerrymander? We can do that. Will it stop abortion? All right, we're willing to.
You want us to lock immigrants in cages? We'll do that too.
And that kind of twisted logic lets so many terrible things fly because they keep thinking that if they keep voting, it's the sunk cost fallacy of if we just keep pushing more to the right, eventually Roe v. Wade will be overturned. Right. And that's the thought process for a huge chunk of, let me be once again very clear with my terms, evangelical conservative Christian voters. Not all Republicans, but for that demographic, that's a huge part of how they vote.
Very depressing.
Trump is doing nothing to dissuade those voters either, because they're going to become very instrumental to how it turns out on election day.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But talking about world leaders and how they're faring, we can see that Trump is highly ineffective in every move that he's making, every word that he says right now. Nothing. He's not helping his own poll numbers, and he's not really the person that anybody's listening to. No. Who believes that science needs to prevail in order to fight this crisis. So I put it to you guys, who is America's true leader during this pandemic? And we'll just go around the room. I have a couple of people in mind. Dr. Yep. Tony Fauci, who has been maybe the one person who's been telling it straight this whole time, giving us the nitty-gritty facts and what we need to know. Andrew Cuomo, Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York. Despite Cuomo, is it Cuomo?
Yeah,
okay,
it's Cuomo.
I'm exotic.
No, I'm just gonna sit over here and be smug about the fact that I just got you on a pronunciation thing. It's fine.
That's fine. We're 1 for 1. It's fine. We're good.
We're fine.
But the way that, despite New York's high numbers in cases and deaths, the way that he's handling the press briefings, and he recently just got tested on camera to show people how easy it is to get tested. Right. Like it's not something we're seeing from a lot of other political officials. Right. Gavin Newsom, the governor in California, has been ahead of this thing for a very long time. He's been a little bit quieter in the press, but I feel like he is doing a much better job of just handling business in his state and being a leader by example, which really is, that's the way this country was built. I feel like everybody gets on the horse when they see somebody doing something revolutionary.
True.
We've got Bernie Sanders, who I know you have a little bit of an issue with, Elizabeth Warren, and just to play devil's advocate, but also because he is becoming influential, Rick Scott in Florida. I do feel like we need to talk about him at the very least, touch on him. I don't think that he's the leader that everybody's looking to, but he is the leader for some people. So just to be totally transparent, we'll put his name in there too. But what do you guys think?
At least put the Michigan governor. What's her name?
Gretchen Whitmer.
She has to go on there. If you're going to put the Florida governor on there, she has to go on there. She has people, protesting her, and she's still locking down. And
isn't Rick Scott a senator nowadays?
Or am
I losing my mind?
He's a senator.
Yeah, he's the former governor, though.
Yeah.
Yes, this sounds accurate.
No, I know Inslee has been very quiet about all of this, but I do think that Washington State handled this fairly well, given that they were the first outbreak.
I was actually going to bring him into this too, because I will say, so Sher-min, do you want to go first, or do you want to go back and forth? Okay. Because I would say, and actually this is kind of a proposal to both of you on this. I don't want to go on a massive conspiracy theory because that's not something I want to do. But I will say it is an interesting thing to see kind of a certain death of federalism happening here, where for some reason governors are now just the trusted edge, which don't get me wrong, effective governors are effective, and I'm really happy about that. But the fact that the federal government has just completely punted this is incredible to me. Don't get me wrong, I think you're right, Arneet. I think our leader, Tony Fauci, Andrew Cuomo, Jay Inslee, Governor Whitmer, like these people are absolutely the ones in charge of this crisis. I think Anthony Fauci has been one of the, like, if he shows up in Congress or at a press conference or something, immediately I'm listening to him because I know he knows what he's talking about. All of the doctors who show up behind Trump, Dr. Birx, I think it was Dr. Redfield who was in charge of the CDC, like all of these people I trust intrinsically because I know they have expertise. But it's the mass death of the federal government of, like, meanwhile, while this is happening, like McConnell's pushing through judges, and like they're firing inspector generals left and right. It's like, what?
So what, you just Obama officials?
Yeah, well, they saw the opening and are like, cool, we can just get rid of everyone we wanted to get rid of now.
And attention. Yeah. Crises.
So I would argue the most important people right now are probably, as much as I love Anthony Fauci and Burke and all these people, I think the governors have been the most important people in this crisis. Cuomo, Inslee, Newsom, all of these people who are willing to actually talk with their citizens, who do weekly briefings, who are willing to talk straight. Like, I've watched, I think, nearly all of Inslee's briefings because they've just, he's a fascinatingly strange man. He is incredibly socially awkward. It's hilarious. But also, like, he's well-spoken and he knows what he's talking about, and he hauls in people who are parts of his administration who actually know what they're saying. And it's been helpful.
The one thing I will say with Inslee is, if this crisis had happened before he started running for president, he might have had a better shot.
Oh yeah.
Our old
I really liked Inslee.
Our old representative would have been president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been incredible. My brother still has like old letters from him, like from when they had to write stuff to their local representative for like government projects. Wow. It's hilarious. But no, yeah, like
he's a good leader.
Yeah, but I'll throw that to you on that one, Sher-min. But I would argue the most important people in this crisis have been the people in charge of their individual states.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think there's this thing where we always joke as liberals that conservatives like this, like their state rights, and liberals like their strong federal government. But I do think that everyone tends to like their state rights and be very grateful for them when you don't like the federal government. I think we can all say we don't like the federal government right now. We don't like Trump. We don't like his administration. So I do think
for a good reason.
Yes, I do think there's a benefit to having strong state rights. It's good that we have states that have a lot of things that they can do without running it by the federal government. So when the federal government just drops the ball in a crisis like this, your governor can actually handle it.
Yeah. So Republicans, thank you for one thing. I appreciate it.
I will say it is.
Thank you for one thing.
It is hilarious watching all these people going like, you can't do that, and then actually being able to throw states' rights back at them, being like, excuse me, states' rights, we can do what we want. You're not our executive.
Remember you told us that? Like, you threw state rights at us, so yeah, we're gonna throw it back at you now.
Oh, if you told me that I was going to use states' rights as an argument when I was 17 to justify stuff during a pandemic, I would have punched you. Like, are you kidding?
It's a funny thing, because when during the Obama years, all the liberal people, of which I'm one of them, so like all the liberal people I knew were like, okay, these conservative people, they keep throwing states' rights. They don't want to listen to the federal government. They don't want to be part of an actual, country. Yeah.
Well, they don't.
There is some irony that right now we're like, thank God for state rights.
Well, especially during the Obama administration, where it's like, we don't want to be a part of Obamacare. We don't want to start these exchanges. Like, we have the state right to not be involved. And it's like, well, how about now, jerks?
When gay marriage came down, they're like, our state didn't pass gay marriage. It's like, yes, the Supreme Court passed gay marriage.
Yeah. The Supreme Court doesn't care about your state's rights?
Yeah.
That was actually decided already?
Pretty sure none of the justices care. Good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for tuning in. That was part 2. Part 3 is coming up very, very soon. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on SoundCloud, on YouTube. And thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, stay motivated, stay sharp. Peace out.